Harper lay awake, cocooned beneath the blankets, feeling the weight of stillness pressing in from all sides. The room was dark, but not the comforting kind. It was a darkness that buzzed quietly, settling heavily into every corner. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath. Only the distant hum of a passing car and the soft rustle of the wind through the dry trees punctuated the silence. Inside, it was just Harper and the ticking clock, a rhythmic reminder of every second they lay awake, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. This had been Harper's nightly ritual for weeks, maybe even months. Each sleepless night bled into the next, stretching time thin, blurring the boundaries of day and night. The daytime hours passed in a haze, almost an afterthought to these prolonged, solitary vigils. The move to this quiet neighborhood was still fresh, the echoes of recent changes, losing a partner, leaving behind friends, still reverberating through the empty rooms, like ghostly imprints on the walls. But tonight, something felt different. A soft light from the street lamp seeped through the curtains, casting a faint, warm glow across the kitchen in the other room. Harper's gaze lingered there, at the barely visible countertops and the familiar outlines of jars and utensils. They sat up, rubbing their eyes, and let their bare feet sink into the cool wood floor, the chill a sharp reminder that they were awake and alone in the depths of the quietest hours. Standing at the threshold of the kitchen, Harper flicked on the light. The sudden brightness illuminated the small space, bringing it to life. The countertops gleamed softly, dotted with the usual chaos of ingredients: a half-open bag of flour, a carton of eggs, and a stick of butter, left out to soften from yesterday's half-hearted attempt at cooking. They ran a finger over the cool, smooth surface of the countertop, leaving a faint trail in the flour dust, and felt a tiny thrill at the unexpected calm that filled the room. Opening the pantry, Harper's eyes settled on the familiar jars and boxes, each one a comforting reminder of recipes they hadn't tried in months. Butter, sugar, cinnamon, simple ingredients, but each with the potential to be transformed. They reached for the mixing bowl, fingers brushing against the smooth, cool metal, and felt an unexpected rush of anticipation. There was something grounding, almost meditative, in the simple rhythm of baking, and right now, Harper needed something to hold on to. With careful, deliberate movements, they began measuring out the ingredients. Flour sifted like snowfall into the bowl, sugar poured in a soft, grainy rush, and butter, softened to perfection, melted into the mixture under the pressure of their fingers. The kitchen filled with the unmistakable, inviting scent of cinnamon as Harper mixed, each step a quiet ritual, a balm for the restless ache they couldn't shake. Flour dusted their hands and fingers, clinging to their skin, and they felt each sensation: the silkiness of the flour, the roughness of the sugar, the spicy warmth of cinnamon, as though it were anchoring them back to the moment. As they kneaded the dough, feeling it yield and transform under their hands, a new thought flickered to life, tentative and curious. What if they shared these cinnamon rolls? Not with friends or family, those connections felt distant now, but with the neighbors they barely knew, a quiet, anonymous gift left on a doorstep in the first light of dawn. It would be a secret act of kindness, a gesture unseen, unacknowledged. The idea grew as they shaped the dough, rolling it out with care before spreading a thick, sugary filling of cinnamon and butter across its surface. The room was heavy with the fragrance, warm and heady, like the hug of a familiar memory. After rolling the dough tightly and cutting it into even spirals, Harper laid each roll onto a baking sheet, tucking them side by side like little treasures. As they waited for the oven to work its magic, Harper stood close, breathing in the scent that intensified with each passing minute. It was intoxicating, the spiced sweetness mingling with the rich, buttery aroma, filling the kitchen and spilling into the quiet house like a promise of warmth. The timer buzzed, breaking the stillness, and Harper opened the oven to a wave of heat and the heavenly scent of freshly baked cinnamon rolls. They leaned close, letting the steam kiss their face, and pulled the tray out, each roll golden and tender, the filling oozing in little rivers around the edges. A sweet sticky glaze waited, thick and creamy, ready to melt into the roll's warm crevices, adding a layer of sweetness that would linger on the tongue. Harper drizzled the glaze over each roll, watching it trickle and pool, turning the cinnamon spirals into glossy, fragrant jewels. Wrapping a few in soft cloth, tucking them carefully as though each one were a small treasure, they could almost taste the soft dough, the way the cinnamon warmth would melt into sweetness with each bite. The dawn light had just begun to brush the horizon as Harper slipped outside. The cool morning air a sharp contrast to the cozy warmth of the kitchen. The neighborhood was hushed, the houses still dark and quiet, each one cloaked in shadows and mystery. They moved softly from one doorstep to the next, placing a roll here, another there, the thrill of anonymity making their heart beat a little faster. The dew on the grass dampened their steps, and they felt the chill of it soaking through their slippers, but they didn't mind. As Harper returned to bed, slipping under the covers and feeling the lingering warmth of the oven still on their hands, something had shifted. They felt a small, tender joy, a glimmer of connection that softened the hard edges of loneliness. For the first time in a long while, the night felt less empty, the silence less suffocating. And as their eyes drifted closed, they wondered what tomorrow's dawn would bring. The following night, Harper returned to the kitchen, but this time they opted for something different. After all, cinnamon rolls had been a success, but there were endless possibilities to explore. The choice fell on buttery scones, the kind that baked to a golden crisp on the outside while staying soft and flaky on the inside, dotted with bits of dried cranberries and a hint of orange zest. Each step felt familiar now, comforting, like a melody they were beginning to know by heart. The small kitchen, once again transformed in the soft light, with flour dusted across the counters and the air rich with the subtle sweetness of baking. As Harper shaped the dough into neat triangles, a sense of purpose filled them, a quiet thrill in knowing that someone else would discover these treats come morning. The scones emerged from the oven, warm and inviting, their tops brushed with cream and a sprinkle of sugar, each one glistening as Harper wrapped them carefully in a cloth and ventured into the cool night to leave them on the doorsteps. Each night that followed became an opportunity to create something new. On Tuesday, it was fresh banana bread, dense and golden with the crackling crust of sugar, filling the kitchen with the scent of ripe bananas and a hint of cinnamon. On Wednesday, Harper experimented with chocolate chip cookies, large, soft in the center with edges that snapped, dotted with dark chocolate chunks that melted into gooey pockets. Thursday brought mini brioche loaves, warm and pillowy, glistening with a hint of melted butter on top. Harper marveled at the variety, at the satisfaction of baking, the craft in transforming simple ingredients into gifts. The baking ritual had become Harper's nightly sanctuary, but it was the subtle changes they noticed around the neighborhood that truly surprised them. Each morning, they would spot little signs of gratitude left on doorsteps and tucked in mail slots. The thank you notes and small tokens from neighbors were like pieces of a puzzle, each one revealing something new about the people who had only been strangers before. There was Mrs. Bell, for instance, who lived just across the street. Her house was always quiet, the curtains drawn tightly as if shielding her from the world outside. But recently, Harper had noticed a change. A single daisy in a mason jar would appear on her doorstep each morning after receiving a treat, delicate and cheerful, a quiet response to the warmth Harper had left behind. It was as if the flowers were Mrs. Bell's way of reaching back, connecting with this invisible baker. Harper imagined the older woman smiling as she placed the daisy in its jar, her day made a little brighter by the simple act of kindness. The Nguyen family, who lived a few doors down, left a note one morning scrawled in neat handwriting. The banana bread tasted like home. Thank you, friend. Harper's heart swelled, picturing them gathered around the breakfast table, sharing a taste of something familiar and comforting. From then on, Harper began leaving extra portions whenever they made something particularly special, imagining the family laughing and talking over slices of fresh-baked bread. Ezra, the retired schoolteacher who lived on the corner, had once been a fixture in the neighborhood, a tall, lively man with a booming laugh. But since the passing of his partner a year before, Ezra's vibrant presence had faded into quiet isolation. One morning, Harper spotted him sitting on his front porch, slowly savoring a slice of cherry almond loaf that Harper had left the night before. As he took a bite, his face softened, and Harper could see the memory of happier times flicker in his eyes. Each treat seemed to bring a bit of warmth back to Ezra's life, like small reminders that he was not alone. These gestures, these connections, brought a new kind of joy to Harper. It wasn't just the baking, it was the unspoken exchanges, the way each person responded in their own unique style. Every recipe became a new opportunity to reach out, to quietly learn about the lives behind each closed door. One night, Harper decided on a recipe for pumpkin spice muffins with a crumbly cinnamon topping, something festive for the season. As they mixed and measured, they imagined how each neighbor might react to the warm, spiced flavors, and the thought filled them with anticipation. Leaving the muffins that night, Harper noticed a glow in the windows they passed, lamps casting soft light into the darkness, as though the houses themselves were keeping watch. It struck Harper then how the entire neighborhood felt different, somehow warmer and more connected than before. It was a place where neighbors no longer felt like strangers, but like friends, separated only by walls and hedges. These quiet, meaningful connections were transforming Harper as much as they were transforming the neighborhood. The sleepless nights felt less hollow, filled now with purpose and warmth. For the first time, Harper didn't feel like an outsider looking in. They felt like they belonged, as much a part of the neighborhood as the old oak trees and flower-lined sidewalks. And as each morning brought new surprises, Harper grew to love the mystery and joy that these simple acts of kindness had brought into their life. One evening, Harper stood in the kitchen, midway through kneading dough for a new batch of soft, pillowy dinner rolls sprinkled with rosemary and sea salt. The comforting rhythm of pressing, folding, and shaping the dough was like a gentle lullaby, guiding Harper through the quiet hours as usual. But as they worked, an unexpected wave of exhaustion washed over them, deeper than anything they had felt in months. A throbbing headache followed, sharp and insistent, leaving Harper light-headed and unsteady. They leaned against the counter, the kitchen suddenly feeling too bright. Harper's hands, still dusted with flour, trembled as they reached for a glass of water, hoping it would clear the strange heaviness settling over them. But even after resting, the exhaustion persisted, clouding their mind and making it impossible to focus. The dough, unfinished, sat in a lopsided mound on the counter, and for the first time since starting this midnight ritual, Harper had to leave it behind, undone. That night, Harper shuffled to bed early, their heart heavy with disappointment. The thought of breaking their nightly tradition tugged at them, and as they lay beneath the blankets, they felt an unexpected pang of loneliness. It was strange. Just a few months ago, sleepless nights had been a source of quiet misery, but now, as Harper drifted in and out of restless sleep, they found themselves missing the warmth of the oven, the feeling of the dough beneath their hands, and the comforting thought of sharing these creations with their neighbors. The next morning, as Harper went outside to collect the mail, they noticed something different around the neighborhood. At first, it was just a single daisy, a small, cheerful flower pinned to the board with a card beside it. The card, printed in neat letters, simply read, "To the Midnight Baker, wherever you are, thank you for making our mornings brighter." Harper blinked, surprised, feeling a mix of pride and shyness. They looked around, wondering if anyone else had noticed, but the street was quiet in the early light. Smiling softly to themselves, they continued on their walk, only to spot other small tokens around the neighborhood. A note taped to the lamppost at the street corner read, "Your banana bread was magic. Whoever you are, you have brightened my day." Passing the Nguyen's family house, Harper noticed a handmade sign propped by the front steps with the words, "Thank you, friend," surrounded by colorful crayon drawings of muffins and loaves of bread. The sight warmed Harper's heart, and they imagined the family gathering together, working on the sign with laughter and smiles, just as Harper had pictured them sharing the treats each morning. Near the park entrance, Harper noticed a short poem pinned to a tree, written in Ezra's distinctive handwriting. "To the baker, sweet gifts you bring, to strangers who wait for dawn to sing. In the quiet hours, a gift, a grace, your kindness felt in every taste." These subtle messages filled Harper with a joy that ran deep, yet they felt a flicker of relief, too, in knowing that their identity remained hidden. The community knew of the Midnight Baker, and they had embraced this anonymous figure with warmth and gratitude. Over the next few days, as Harper allowed themselves the rest they needed, they continued to notice new tokens popping up around the neighborhood. On a fence post near Mrs. Bell's house, someone had tied a string of paper hearts, each one inscribed with the words, "Thank you, Midnight Baker." Another sign appeared outside the community garden, inviting anyone who had enjoyed the treats to leave a note of thanks. Soon, the board became filled with little slips of paper, each one an anonymous message of appreciation for the baker whose gifts had brightened their days. The neighborhood had noticed the absence of their treats, and that realization filled Harper with a profound sense of belonging. It was no longer just about giving, it was about being part of a shared community, one where kindness moved in circles like a quiet rhythm they were all connected to. Finally, one evening, when the fatigue had lifted and their energy returned, Harper stepped back into the kitchen, savoring the familiar motions of sifting flour and measuring spices. That night, they prepared simple shortbread cookies, something easy to ease back into the routine. As they left the cookies on each doorstep, Harper felt the same old spark of joy, a comfort in knowing the familiar pattern was back. In the days that followed, they gradually worked up to more intricate recipes, a little stronger and more sure with each batch. The neighbors' gestures remained in Harper's thoughts, each message and token a reminder that they were part of something larger than they had ever expected. Their small, quiet acts of kindness had woven a bond with the neighborhood that even a brief absence couldn't break. As Harper returned to bed that night, their heart was filled with gratitude, not only for the chance to give, but for the warmth they'd received in return. After a week of easing back into baking, Harper decided to return to one of their favorite recipes, apple cinnamon streusel muffins. This time, however, the act of baking felt different, deeper, like they were creating something more than just a batch of treats. The kitchen filled with the rich scent of caramelized apples and cinnamon, an aroma that brought back memories of the early days of the Midnight Baker ritual, before they'd known the warmth and joy these gifts would bring. Each step in the recipe felt familiar, yet renewed. Harper sliced fresh apples, their crisp, fragrant flesh releasing a subtle sweetness as they were folded into the spiced batter. As the muffins baked, the kitchen filled with warmth and the intoxicating aroma of apples, cinnamon, and caramelized sugar, wrapping Harper in a comforting embrace. The golden peaks of the streusel topping crackled as they cooled, inviting Harper to admire each carefully prepared muffin as though they were a small work of art. With the muffins warm and carefully wrapped, Harper stepped outside into the cool night, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. The neighborhood lay peacefully under the soft glow of porch lights, the occasional hum of distant traffic the only sound in the stillness. Moving from one house to the next, Harper felt an overwhelming sense of connection to the people behind each door, to those who had reached back across the invisible bridge of kindness, who had embraced the mystery of the Midnight Baker with gratitude and warmth. Leaving the final muffin on Ezra's porch, Harper paused, taking in the quiet street and feeling a profound sense of peace. The Midnight Baker's gifts had transformed this place into more than just a neighborhood. It had become a home filled with small, unspoken connections that bound them to each neighbor in ways they'd never anticipated. In the following days, Harper continued to bake, each night a new opportunity to connect with the neighborhood. Some nights it was a fragrant loaf of rosemary focaccia, the scent of herbs mingling with the cool night air. Other nights, delicate lemon cookies or buttery croissants, their golden tops brushed with a hint of sweetness. The Midnight Baker remained anonymous, a quiet figure moving through the shadows, but the bonds Harper had created felt undeniably real. Each shared smile, each soft-spoken word of gratitude from neighbors filled Harper with a warmth that extended beyond any single act of kindness. There was a certain magic in remaining unknown, in being able to give freely without expectation, without the spotlight. In those silent moments under the cover of night, Harper felt like a part of something bigger than themselves, a small, unseen force of kindness moving through the neighborhood. It was enough to simply be a part of the community, connected by these silent gestures and shared appreciation, knowing that each treat left behind was a reminder that no one here was truly alone. As Harper drifted to sleep each night, the scents of cinnamon, butter, and warm spices lingering on their hands, they felt a rare kind of peace. They had once been alone, a solitary figure passing through the quiet hours, but now they were rooted in a place that felt like home. This small, unexpected role as the Midnight Baker had shown Harper the power of simple kindness, of moments that could bridge the gaps between strangers and create a tapestry of shared experiences. And perhaps, as time went on, Harper would eventually step into the light, known by name and face. But for now, the mystery of the Midnight Baker lived on, a story whispered between neighbors, a figure that would remain etched in the fabric of the neighborhood, a testament to the power of giving without seeking, of love shared without recognition. And in that beautiful anonymity, Harper found a place where they truly belonged, wrapped in the warmth of a community bound by kindness and quiet joy. As the stars shimmered softly over the neighborhood, and the houses lay peacefully in sleep, Harper knew, without a doubt, that they were home.